Cool. Hello, everybody.
You should be good. Yep.
Okay, cool. Cool. Hi, I'm Ben Cartwright-Cox. This is BGP error handling, which is a sort of upgraded version of my blog post that you might have read. The first and most important mandatory, I suppose, I run a business which involves being peered to many IXP root servers and people's routers and stuff. I won't test exploits on them, I promise, unless you give consent to have your router target practiced. All testing in the post was done on VMs and physical hardware for the rare case for Juniper, where it's harder to emulate that stuff. Starting off, recently a Brazilian ASN started announcing a IPv6 route with an interesting BGP attribute. It was interesting because it basically killed every Juniper device that ingested it, which is cool. Of course, that's OK for peering to some degree. Like, if your peering sessions come down, like, it's not great. That's really less OK if it's a transit session, because that's potentially like going to disconnect you from the internet. The one interesting thing, the one that brought it to my attention, I know many different ASNs got impacted by this, but Colt, like British, like supercarrier, mostly British, I assume, basically got de-peered from the internet entirely. Other ASNs got hurt too, as mentioned, but Colt was the big one, and that's what actually drew my attention to it, because it inconvenienced me. So the offending payload on this packet was extremely boring. Basically, it's attribute 28, BGP entropy label capability. Looking at the RFC, it's interesting. It's effectively, I assume this was originated from a Huawei device, and somehow like an iBGP attribute got regurgitated back straight out onto the internet. This attribute is technically not corrupted. It's, as one would expect, like a BGP entropy label capability attribute to look like. But however, just this presence of here and it interacting with a Junos version of around 17 and above, I don't have all the versions, so I can't do a binary search on the exact vulnerable version. But around 17 plus-ish would basically blow up the session, which is bad. So BGP attributes. There are two sections of a BGP attribute. There's the NRI and the withdraw data, aka basically what prefixes you're dealing with. And then there is the attributes. In BGP multiproto, those things are also in the attributes, but that's a detail that it's not worth thinking about. So attributes contain useful stuff like the AS path, your community values, local pref if you're iBGP, med if you're on eBGP and you care about med, aggregation info, stuff like that, stuff to describe a route. There are a lot of attributes out there. There's about 200, the 209 are technically unassigned, so up for grabs if you are willing to work with the IANA. 14 are deprecated, 32 are active. And that basically just means that there's no formal definition for them being not used anymore. Most of these, however, like still, even the active ones are not actually used anymore, or increasingly rare, or only used in iBGP environments. A very, very vanishingly small amount of these attributes you'll actually see on the real internet that you would get from like a transit provider. But you know, what about the ones that are technically deprecated? What about the ones that like you wouldn't normally see over a transit session? They surely must be handled all correctly, right? So, picture this. You're on a friendly internet exchange, everyone's nice and happy, and they're all connected to the root server. And then someone goes, hey guys, check out this really cool BGP attribute I found. And some people get blown up. Basically what ends up happening is, upon receiving the attribute, the people who are vulnerable to the session on the other side will basically go, I don't know what that is, and immediately like reconnect the session. Just disconnect it down and probably reconnect. So this is pretty bad. Losing root servers is a fantastic way of shifting a large amount of traffic for a large amount of networks. This is bad, but the really bad one is this sort of scenario, in where, you know, once again, hey guys, check out this cool attribute I found. And where you can target specific devices, because not all of the operating system vendors are vulnerable to the same things. So you can effectively skip vulnerabilities across the internet and have them target the device that you're looking for. So for example, if in this hypothetical situation, where you know NTT runs Junos, Cogent runs iOS, and then you are running Extreme, then you basically can get blown up because you can send an attribute out through NTT, which will get carried to Cogent, and regardless, both of your sessions will explode, because Cogent will happily carry an attribute that it doesn't understand. Funnily enough, in RFC 7606, which is one of the RFCs that if your vendor implements correctly should mitigate all of the problems I'm about to describe to you, has a securities consideration section that I can best describe as bang on the money. RFC's security consideration sections have always, in my eyes, not been massively helpful. However, this one perfectly describes the situation that I found myself in. I won't read the entire thing to you, but I will basically read out the bit that made me laugh when I read it for the first time. Since significant fan-out can occur between the attacker and the routers that do recognize the attribute type, this attack could be potentially particularly harmful. That's pretty correct. It can be potentially particularly harmful. Yeah, to clarify what Extreme is saying, to clarify what this is, any AS can emit a BGP message with a corrupted v6 extended community attribute, v6 address-specific extended community attribute. It will get carried around a bunch of global networks, and when an Extreme device ingests it, it will reset the session. Now, because it's going to be propagated globally, that's going to be your transit session. That's going to cause your transit session to flap. That's going to be bad. Even better, though, it's going to flap over and over again because when it reconnects to do a feed, it's going to ingest the same poison pill and then reset again. Not great. Actually, the better part about this is that if you are running, this doesn't even impact your edge devices. If you're running Extreme in your cores, then if it's got a full iBGP session, it's going to ingest that inside your core, which may be even worse of a place for it to do, because that might be a place where you have even less redundancy. So having that device go offline, as far as routing is concerned, could be even more catastrophic to your network. So surprisingly, MikroTik, no issues. Didn't log a single error. This is also router OS 7.7. Obviously, router OS is slightly infamous for having different behavior version to version, even the minor releases. So unknowing if anyone in the room is actually using 7.7 in particular, but if you are using 7.7 in particular, then you're actually safe. Ubiquity, also, to me, surprisingly, which will become clear later, no problem. No issues detected. I suspect the Edge OS devices forked off Quagga a long time ago before Quagga and then FRR grew any of the features that would soon to become problematic. So yeah, I thought that was very interesting. Arista EOS, at least the versions I tested, no problems. Didn't log anything, although then again, I'm not a deeply experienced with EOS, so it could be logging it to a place that I never found. But I did do a good look, and I couldn't find any errors, any error logs, which would be helpful, because it's useful to know when you encounter something on RFC 7606 that handles, basically if that RFC handles a bad attribute, the old behavior was to blow up the BGP session. The new behavior is to turn it into a withdraw. So it would be nice to know if that behavior has been triggered. iOS XE, XR, and Classic. Also, no errors. They logged the issue perhaps a little bit too verbosely, to the point where if you're logged in on the serial console and you're getting slammed with this stuff, your serial console will also be getting slammed with this stuff. That's slightly annoying, but also it is what it is. It's better than nothing. You can turn off all of the messages if you want, but once again, it'll be nice to know. Junos. So we know about attribute 28 already because that's the one that started this entire adventure. It turns out attribute 29, one up, also has a similar problem. I say not disclosed publicly, that's an old slide. It is disclosed publicly, as you see, as seen in JSA 75210. Basically, similar thing, corrupted attribute causes thing to explode. So you can mitigate this, and you should mitigate this by going into your Junos config and adding bgp-error-tolerance. You can enable this without any downsides. So it will instantly activate the new behavior. It won't reset any of your sessions. I don't think there is any downside to adding this. So please, for the love of God, add this. There is no reason to not, in my eyes. And Nokia SROS, there are loads of ways to pop a Nokia SROS session. I won't describe them all, but some of them overlap with Junos. Nokia also has a way of handling this correctly. It is also not default, so you have to add that there. Basically, you go into your BGP groups and type error handling update fault tolerance. That then makes it work correctly. Because I think that this one was particularly obscure, people were already stung by the Juniper issues, but the Nokia stuff hadn't seemed to have been impacted by any of these problems just yet, probably because the attributes required here are slightly obscure, and so just had a very low chance of actually appearing on the internet. So I viewed Nokia when I was researching this as sort of like a high risk, because I suspect no one had actually, I suspected and was actually reasonably correct in the end, that almost no one had actually activated error handling update fault tolerance on their SROS boxes. I would like to thank the following people. Okay, I redacted a few. I would like also to thank the people who probably know that I notified them. for enabling it, me contacting them and be like, hey, are you aware that your router, your edge could be exploded? They generally took the message well. So yeah, thank you to those people for doing that. It's also worth pointing out that Nokia has released a statement or a bug issue thing under 230450B. You can only view that if you're logged in to the Nokia alerts portal, but if you are a Nokia customer, then you can view that. It basically says everything I just said. Huawei Net Engine, no issues detected, which I think is very, it surprised me at least. I was expecting something from that platform. But also, finding Huawei images are extremely difficult due to the nature of sometimes import restrictions, things like that. I can't even acquire like test hardware, which makes it very hard to actually just get a physical box off eBay and test it. So there may be bugs in other products, but I couldn't find anyone in this particular product. FRR had a same issue, had a very similar issue. If you sent a corrupted tunnel encapsulation, which you can send regardless of whether it's an iBGP session or not, the session would explode. It was assigned to CV, and it was fixed post-public disclosure. Is what it is. Was a little bit annoying to have to go through public disclosure and then have FRR fix that problem, but open source. OpenBGPD, which was surprising to me, exploded on an invalid origin to customer, only to customer. Handles the behavior correctly with all the other packets. It's actually turned out to be a much more interesting bug in the OpenBGPD that seemed to only be reachable with this type of attribute. This was fixed in OpenBSD, signed to CSV, CVE, whatever. Extreme. So Extreme explodes on two attributes. Both are pretty obscure. And actually, the problem here is that if your attribute is obscure, you have a higher chance of it being exploitable. Because as per the rules of BGP propagation on unknown attributes, if your router understands the attribute, then it may handle things, it may apply RFC 7606 processing to it. If it doesn't understand the attribute and the transitive bit is set, then that's going to go across all around the internet until it hits the target device that does understand it, or understands it. And so that's really bad. So if your thing explodes on an obscure attribute, that's really bad, because that allows you to target extreme devices in particular. What's also very bad is after contacting Extreme about this, there is no mitigating config by default, and Extreme does not want to patch this. Their argument is that the RFC, the original BGP RFC, declares that you should explode in these situations, and therefore they will explode in this situation. There's a bit further on this, but basically there's a CVE assigned for this. It's currently being disputed by Extreme, whatever. So this is an email that I exchanged, the final email exchange I had with Extreme. I won't read the entire thing to you, but I will read my favorite bits of the highlights. We are not considering this a vulnerability due to the presence of RFC 7606. We are evaluating support for RFC 7606 as a future feature. There are some nuance in the middle, but this is one of the strangest security discussions I've had. So extremely strange that I would really recommend you actually read the entire email exchange, which I posted and mostly redacted the names out of, just because I wouldn't believe if I said that to me in the future, in the past or whatever. So I reckon you should look at that exchange. It's very strange.